Hello, chess friends. This is International Master Valeri Lilov, and welcome to today's session on a very interesting topic that a lot of people would wonder, okay, how is that really going to happen in my game? We're going to be talking about the e4, e5 traps. Now, first of all, traps don't have that much of a great popularity. Besides the Blitz games, we all know that if you're playing a longer game or like a tournament game, they're never going to happen. So, unless just your opponent's very weak or you're very lucky. This is true. However, there are some really important, I call them principle traps, like things that people tend to do or tend to notice uh, just because they're theoretical. However, there are others that are different. So I want to show you a game that happened in the French Championship, 2008, and we're going to see some of these natural traps. So basically, after the moves of e4, e5, white continued with knight c3, knight c6, bishop c4, and white kind of knew that he really didn't like this bishop on the c4, so he decided, you know what, I'm just going to get rid of it. I'm going to punch that bishop out of the way so that we force it to move, and once it goes, it will eventually cause a problem. So that's what the move of knight a5 was about. It was important, and it seems relevant enough. So what are we going to do in a position or a structure of that sort? Okay, there are a few things. Bishop c4, in and out of itself, was an actual trap, but it wasn't a very apparent kind of trap. It's one of these moves that you do it, you don't know what it is doing or the reason necessarily. You just know it is a good move and I like to keep it that way. So okay, now we got a key question, which is all right. So we've made it good. That was important. So what's next? Are we supposed to punch him in? Are we supposed to go back and walk away? What are we really supposed to do? That's a wonderful question. The proper way to answer it is to really think about avoiding backward kinds of moves. See, any sort of backward move that you do is going to push you away. It's going to make you to lose quite a bit of that tension. So we don't. See, that's really what you have to understand. You have to stay put. Okay, but how do we stay put if the opponent's attacking us, essentially? Well, the important thing is obviously the idea of attacking and attacking quickly. The move of bishop takes f7. Okay, so this is really huge out there. It's all we have to do. So, like, actually, this is a great idea. So, like, what you have to do is first and foremost focus on the possibility of threatening, forcing moves. This is how we do it. The check is great because next thing, especially after that, he has nothing else. He has to take back. But there comes the real trick. Once black takes, white gets queen h5. And now we see that the trap exists simply because black violated one of the most important principles of the good opening, which is center. You have to make sure that you support the center or you keep your center. If you don't, you're screwed. Basically, that's the whole thing out there. It's like black just allows white to come forward and attack in different ways. And then, of course, after the move queen to the h5 is just a brilliant attack or tactic out there. He has very little or nothing to do. So we could see the trouble. He's practically lost. After queen h5, black did g6 in this position, so he did go that way. Surely white plays queen takes d5, queen f6, queen takes a5, and then we could see that there is also knight d5 or knight f3 as a move. It's really important. You need to think, or at least consider making these type of moves, so that any kinds of checks, captures, or direct threats are always in line and in position, so you can make it. Now with queen takes a5, obviously this is going to be very hard because we can have knight f3, even d4 is coming up real quickly. It's perfect, step by step. That's what we do. Okay, now I want to show you another type of trap, because traps are usually, especially when it comes down to openings, they're pretty easy. So we're going to see one that many would consider a pretty fast one. e4, e5, knight f3, and people have actually heard about Petrov. There's a lot of potential when black does go with the move of knight f6. Is there? There could be. Here is the trick though. The moment black actually does the move of knight f6, he leaves the center unsupported, and then we grab the pawn. Of course, the idea is that once we actually get to grab the pawn, we're also leaving the e4 to hang. And a lot of people are like, oh, you know what, this is a sweet pawn. Now, that may sound like a beginning trap, a trap for beginners, but it's not. The reason is because this move loses instantly. It's important to see why. Queen e2. Very important thing. Because now if the knight walks away, we're going to have that move of knight of the c6 coming. And then we're going to kill the queen. We're going to attack the king. Or we're going to destroy the opponent. Again, the most important thing is always the possibility of attacking moves. Checks, captures, direct threats. The forceful moves that you come with in order to attack the opponent. Now, that doesn't mean that these are always going to win. It just simply means that we could start that way. Now, of course, there's a question: what happens in case black just protects it? Well, you can do d3. And then you get to understand the real problem, that black really cannot move that knight out of the way, because if he does move it, we can do a move like knight of the g6 there, and it's a wonderful idea. We get to follow up. We have knight of the g6. We got the tactics or the threats there. It's wonderful, really great, and really simple. It's effective. Again, you start with the idea of when a trap is actually possible. A trap only exists in a situation, in a state of position where somebody violates a rule of the good development. When that occurs, then the trap is out there. So we can have that. And so that's the reason why we're doing it, because like black is obviously, losing the opportunities here. And with the d3, I mean, maybe you can just end up playing bishop to the d6, but it really doesn't matter, because after bishop to the d6, we could have that chance to do d takes to the e5, e4, bishop to the e takes e5, f4. We have that shot of threatening him pretty quickly, and then we can even do a move of e takes to the d. Again, the biggest plan of action towards such positions is look at the principle. Like if a move of the opponent sort of violates the rule of the principle, he'll lose quickly. And that's what goes right now, because, obviously the black king, the bishop on e5, and the rest of his pieces, they're pretty horrible. So now that's another very interesting trap. Counterattacking, engaging tactics in the early stage of the game is a bad idea. That's why you have to keep things as simple as you could. Saying that you have to just avoid anything at all, but try to keep things simpler, because by keeping things simpler, you'll avoid moving yourself in a problematic or a more difficult or troublesome position. That's what this is about. And a move like Queen E2 obviously fixes it, because it creates that big threat and everything around it. So now let's talk a little bit about the other actually, I'd like to show you a very interesting other trap. So 1 second. Now the next one was played between Morphy and the Counts. Now I suppose some of you might have seen that game. If you haven't, that's okay. But it's definitely a very interesting example, so you could see a little bit more on what you can expect. So let's talk about it. Morphy was white, so he started off with moves like e4, e5, knight f3, d6, and d4. I mean, apparently with a move like d6, black is forcing himself backward. He's not standing well. And, white uses that possibility to counter. It's a very good idea. So what happens next? d4 was perfect. Obviously, what black has to do in this position is, I mean, he can actually exchange, and then we can continue with a move of knight takes to the d4. So it's good. Now, what you have to remember, it's a really huge idea. This is very, very important. What you have to know is that being able to counter, like, is only a privilege of somebody who's very well prepared. Unfortunately, black is not. So he's just behind and badly placed. Now, he played bishop g4. And the reason why he did that type of move was simply because he wanted to pin down the f3. And then with that in mind, he wanted, okay, so it's like if I can pin down the f3, and obviously the knight can run to take it, and things are good, right? Almost. Because it's engaging in tactics. It's doing things that are not supposed to be done in this position. So what are we going to do? First and foremost, you have to make sure that you actually are able to attack him, like d-dix to the e in this type of position. And so what you're realizing in this moment is that, in case black would do a move of bishop takes f3, we can come up with a move like queen takes to the f3. We could go for a move like bishop to c4. We're winning the bishop pair in that moment. And so that is great. Okay, so what do you have to consider in this type of position is making sure that you get your forces lined up, ready, and attacking. Is that easy? Not at all. But you see, white just turns out to be super prepared in comparison to black. That's very important. So black is standing behind. He's got almost nothing. You look at white, he's got the bishop pair, he's got the challenge on the f7, and he's got a lots of that threats, lots of these threats that are necessary. So okay, what goes after bishop to the c4 is that black plays knight f6. So what is white supposed to do now? Take a moment, think about it carefully. Okay, when you're playing in this type of position, you just need to be thinking about threats. So bishop c4 was a good threat, but it's only one. It's a single attack out there. So what we're looking for is a way to create more than one threat. You see, obviously more than one threat will cause more problems. Queen b3 is a perfect setup. This move is a great candidate in this position. We have that chance to follow up, instantly. We can combine the pieces. That's the biggest thing. You get to combine those type of forces. So we have the f7 under a threat, and then we also have the ability to attack the b7. It is great. Step by step, everything works perfectly. We get the challenge. So that's actually very interesting because right after queen to b3, he doesn't have anywhere to go. You see? Queen e7 is what black plays. He hopes, okay, if at least f7 is defended in case b7 falls, you can do queen b4, and you could solidify the position. And that was all right. It wasn't perfect, but it was something that black just wanted to come up with. So what are we going to do in this moment? It's a good question. In the end of the day, what is super important is that you always like to focus on development before anything else. That means, there are other things that matter, but what you care about is, can I finish development? Knight c3 therefore comes up, and now you see the real idea of any gambit as well as any trap, and what makes them tick, what makes them work. It's not the tactics, it is the development. Because when you get the development right, the rest of the pieces are just going to work out the way they should, and then you can make a lot of ideas. So we have that beautiful possibility to develop our forces, get them ready. Now with knight c3 in mind, black actually had only one move to do, which was c6, bishop g5, and then b5, hopefully, punching the position and trying an attack of that kind. So what do we do next? Think about that. All right, now, the best idea is you don't have to worry about him jumping or trying to attack. The best idea is simply to break. Knight takes b5. That was a great move. C takes to b5. Bishop takes to b5. Forced black to make knight bd7. Then alongside castles along the way. We got the attack here. We've got the pin there. We've got the hit here over there. And you could sort of realize just how easy it is as white is able to successfully bring in every piece into the attack. See? It's brilliant. It's like I set my pieces up. I've gotten my attack and my tactics. All I want from this point on is just to continue and make them go together, make them grow, make them, really powerful and important. And so as black actually did make the move of rook to the d8, now it's white's turn. So apparently white is brilliant. He's got a huge amount of space. He's got a really great way to keep the attack out there. So how do we go about this? This is very, very important. Okay, now, I like to tell you that in this position, you have a lot of forces. And it's natural to think a little bit about, okay, I'm ready and I'd like to just break through. But let me tell you this. You're never prepared enough. Okay, you could have a lot of like nice development and pieces and control, but you're never enough prepared. This is why right down the move of rook to the d8, white decided I've got it to both bishops, I've got the queen, I've got the the pressure and the challenge and the tension and the mobility. So all I'm about to do is punch him right in. Rook takes d7. There was. And so in case of rook takes to the d7, or rook takes to the d7, there came the move of rook to the d1, which we could see was amazing. Like white got the pin on the f6, he got the pin on the d7 to e8. You have that queen, the bishops, the rook, the extra pressure, and especially the black king sitting there, and that's it. It's just a wonderful, really great attack. Tactics in here really exist because of that opportunity. Just I love my pieces to step up and just it's this is really great. Just again, like the most important thing is I want to have those forces. Let's get them into the play. Let's get them right. Perfect. And yeah, I mean, like in the end of the day, it was great. So after all, when this move rook d1 happened, black of course has to do something like queen e6. Like obviously, moving away from the pin is the most sensible, the most natural way to go. And then what do we do next? So with all those good forces into play, all this brilliant development, must be able to do something. The only question is how. And here comes my suggestion to you. The best thing that you could do is focus your attention on actual moves that are not only most powerful, but also help you to connect bigger threats versus the opponent. So, like, look at this. And in the moment this happened, white played bishop takes d7, knight takes. Oops, sorry, can't play queen takes d7. Knight takes d7. There came the move of queen b8, knight takes b, rook d8, and that was the end of it. Literally. And see, the trap was basically just about that idea. All I need to do is make sure my development goes faster. And then black didn't realize how did it come so bad. Didn't look like it in the beginning, but it was very, very interesting. White made it work. He was effective and he was successful. Those are the two things that mattered in this type of, in such a position, and it was good. Okay, so what I like to do is actually show you another really interesting example. So, okay, 1 second. Now, this next game was between, like, it was actually a game between two rather beginner to intermediate players, but it's a very common example. People do that all the time, and it's not necessarily a trap because it is caused by the opponent making a mistake. Still, what's the best order? What's the best way to go for in this type of position? Okay, the thing that is super important is you have to think in terms of weaknesses. Like, are there any specific weaknesses that you can go against, actually? So, is there anything we could do to, I don't know, attack him or target or do whatever? Because if there is not, it's going to be very difficult. But right now, there is something. And what I mean is powerful. Look at this. First thing, first thing is first, and it's a wonderful move. It's all about knight takes d5. It's a great move in that moment, and just we are actually able to, to just build things and break him. Look at that. For example, after that move, in case of f takes to the e, queen to h5, king e7, queen takes to the e5, simply takes down his whole position and the play, and that's about it, really. And then, for example, after that, in case of king f7, bishop to the c4 check is great. See, this is again like everything is about the way you set up the attack. Now, you're going to say, okay, but what about the opponent? Well, right now he has no development. So you could see, you could look at it, and then you find out he has nothing to really help him. No chances, no pieces, nothing to come with or build his position around it. So as a result, in case of king to the g6, of course, there's queen f5, king here. We got d3, g5, h4. All he's doing is just to defend out there, and it's incredible. We have that attack. We got h takes to the g in this type of position, and then it's just it is amazing. Most important thing about such a position is I need to get those pieces in a line with the attack. And maybe you can just do a move of queen to the e8, but then we can do h6 to the g, king g7, and even a small move like bishop there is going to be great because then we're having that ability to line the bishop up through to the c3, and obviously black's done. So this was great. Again, a huge build-up, a wonderful tactical sequence, and at the end of the day, it ends up a killer. So black lost. Love it. So I'd like to thank you all for joining me today. Again, like remember that traps are based of your opponent's mistakes. So it's all up to what he does. If he doesn't allow you, you're not going to be able to do it. Still, you have to rely on basic things like development, structure, and better preparation. Hope that makes sense. Thank you so much.